let's start with worship. And I hate to even say that, because when I say worship, what does everyone think I'm talking about? Music. Okay. I'll just get this out of the way now. Worship is so much more than just music. I tend to use the term musical worship. And some people, they don't like the fact that worship is largely musical at church, because music is one of many art forms through which we could express our worship, our praise, our adoration for God. And that is true. However, I will say that there is a special emphasis put on music, and particularly singing. There's also talk of playing instruments and even of dancing in the Bible, but singing in particular is mentioned in the New Testament as being something that we ought to do when we gather. The Bible even says, exhorting one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. So, with all of that said, what do you want to say about singing in church?
Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge that there's a wide variety of musical styles, and if you go beyond just the music and the worship, there's a variety of styles of preaching. There's different ways that people conduct services. So we're going to try to speak about this in a way that impacts all, no matter what type of service they're in. And so, the first thing I would say is church in general is not a spectator sport. You're not there to observe only. You're there to participate in it. And when it comes to singing, this is, definitely case in point. And whether we go to a contemporary church where there's a worship band and lights and fog machines and all that, or whether we're just in a more traditional church where we're singing hymns or whatnot, the issue is the same. Am I engaging with the music that is being played, with the words that are being spoken? Bill Gaither and Mark Lowry years ago had this thing where, Bill told Mark, run that lyric through your head. But it was a true statement. We need to think about what we're singing. So often we're just reading the words off the screen or from memorization or out of a hymn book or wherever the words are coming from, and we're not engaging with them and really worshiping God through that music and through the songs. And so if we want to get anything out of it, we have to come with a spirit of engagement. And this will be the thread throughout all of our involvement in church. We want to put the responsibility on the worship pastor, on the pastor himself when he preaches, whoever's up front. We want them to bear the responsibility of us getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. But we need to take that responsibility back onto ourselves and say, hey, I can make a difference here if my heart and my attitude is right.
Yeah. When you have a group of people that is really singing, and we don't see this very much anymore, but there are still places that are like this. You go in there and everyone is singing, and they are bolstered by each other's singing. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I'm a college-educated musician. I'm very confident in my singing ability. Even last time I went to church, I was singing, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to myself. I heard someone behind me who was belting it out at the behest of the pastor who specifically spoke about that last week. And then I thought, okay, I can come on a little bit. That was one person in a sea of thousands that caused me to feel that way just because I was within earshot of them. When we all do that together, it is so powerful. I mean, it will grip your heart to be a part of a throng like that. And it is just like a little piece of heaven, is what we imagine heaven being like. Once again, if it has to be you that starts the domino effect, then so be it. Mm-hmm. I believe it was, I guess it was Charles Wesley that was the hymn writer. I get John and Charles confused. There were these guidelines that they wrote about musical worship in church. And this word that was used stuck with me. The guidelines said that you should not be bawling. That is to say, just
Screaming,
hollering it out. That's not what we're talking about here. I would avoid doing anything that unnecessarily draws attention to yourself. And my more musical people, I think, really need to listen up here, because we can sing harmony. We can do the little ad-libs that the worship team is doing and that kind of thing. And I didn't realize that people actually did that from the congregation until I went to college. But yeah, that is a thing that people do. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with either of those. But I would try to avoid drawing attention to yourself unnecessarily, just because what you're doing is meant to be corporate. This is not your time alone with God. This is not where you close your eyes, you close your ears, and it's just you and God. Even some church leaders will say that sometimes. It's like,
you're not in the shower. You're not in your car by yourself going down the road. You're
right.
in a group of people, and
right.
it is what you said a minute ago. It's us feeding off of one another in a way that is somehow deeper than what we can really understand psychologically. There's something going on there that bolsters our spirit. It joins us together in unity when we're all praising God together. It lifts us to that higher plane that I was talking about. I just don't think we can hardly get there by ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need other people around us, and I think that's what the corporate worship does. I think I've said this before, but I love it when I love our music. We have a small orchestra. All that is good stuff, but I really like it at the end of a song. Oftentimes our worship pastor will stop the music and we'll just sing as a congregation. And I'm thankful I'm in a congregation that sings. They sing out.
Yes.
And I mean, it kind of just gives you chills up your spine when you hear all of God's people lifting praise mm-hmm. together in unison. I mean, it's really, that's what you're there for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it breaks my heart that there are some people listening to this podcast that have never experienced that. That may never experience that.
Well, and I think what we need to address is, okay, what if you're not in a church like that?
Yeah.
What if your neighbors won't sing? What do you do? And I think the first thing you do is you sing. Mm-hmm. Don't let their non-participation cause you to be a non-participant. I think the other thing you do is you begin to, if you develop the relationships like we talked earlier, you begin to have this conversation and say, hey, I would really love it if maybe some of y'all who do sing would come stand by me and let's start this little cell that sings, mm-hmm. And rather than being scattered all over the church, and then, hey, it's like the choir in the congregation effect.
Right.
Hey, come, let's sing together, mm-hmm. and that's something you can have a conversation about if you're being honest with people, mm-hmm. and get them to make a joyful noise unto the Lord, which is what we're there for.
Right. Yeah, I like how you mentioned the choir. That actually is one of the technical functions of a choir, is to pull the rest of the congregation up into the music. And of course, choirs are kind of going out of style these days, but those who do advocate for choirs advocate strongly because they know that we need that. We don't need to let that go. Let me just say this. Singing is mentioned 400 times in the Bible or thereabout, and at least 50 of those are direct commands. Singing is important, and if listening to music is great, and that can be spiritually beneficial, but regardless of your musical talent, I would encourage people to not just go and stand there and with their mouths shut. I mean, if you think that you sound awful, then maybe you can start by singing quietly or something like that. I will say, in an ideal circumstance where everyone is singing, there is enough of a musical ear across the general populace mm-hmm. that the strong voices can help the not as strong voices actually sing in tune. Mm-hmm. But that aside, standing there with your arms folded, lips sealed, doing nothing, just waiting for it to be over, that is not pleasing to the Lord.
Well, another thing I want to hit on here too is a lot of people want to push down the emotion or minimize the emotion, but I don't see how you can have an interaction with an all-powerful God who has saved you from eternal damnation and brought you into relationship with him, who provides for your needs, who gives you your very breath. How can you worship him without any emotion?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem practical to me. You can sing a song without any emotion, but you can't truly worship without emotion somewhere. So don't be scared of emotion. Tears are good. I mean, raising your hand. I mean, all those things are important. And I just believe in my soul that when we get close enough to God, it causes us emotion in some form or fashion. And we shouldn't try to eliminate that in our church services.